What's going on? Welcome to Asian Cosell. So I'm just like, oh, wow, Charlie's going to talk about salary cap for professional baseball in the MLB. So on top of, Charlie being, the political analyst and influencer, he knows ball. So let's get right into this video. And yes, rest in peace again for Charlie Kirk. And let's listen in.
Everybody, yesterday, the Chicago Cubs walked off against the Atlanta Braves in extra innings. By the way, I don't like these new extra inning rules. I'm sorry. I don't like this whole you get a runner on second base. The whole thing feels just like, I don't, we could debate that another time. Not a fan. Anyway, we're not here to discuss that. We're here to discuss hopefully the push for a salary cap and a floor. And joining us now is Paul Zeiss. I think I pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I didn't. Paul, sports columnist for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Paul, great to see you. Paul, you had a really impactful piece here about how Tony Clark and the MLBPA are steering their members down the wrong path. I think it's time for a salary cap in baseball. What do you say, sir? Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me, number one. Number two, I think that what's going to happen is guys like you and I are going to continue to wishfully think there's going to be a salary cap in baseball. But as long as the super agents run the league, which they do, and I mean, I don't care what anybody says, the super agents, the Scott Borases of the world, they run the league and they run the Major League Players Association. And so therefore, it's going to be really, really difficult for anybody to actually make any progress on a salary cap. And we can get into a lot of other reasons why, including the fact that the owners really don't want it for different reasons.
Yeah, well, let's start with the fan experience. Why would this be better from a holistic improving baseball reason? Why would a salary cap improve the experience? I have my own opinions. I'm tired of seeing the same 4, 5, 6 teams obviously generate the higher output because of how much they spend. The Dodgers, the Astros, the Yankees, and not even the Cubs are not even spending like they did in 2016. Let's put the super agents aside because I do want to get into that. Why would a salary cap be good for baseball?
Well, I mean, I think you can just point to other sports, right? We just saw the NBA Finals included the Indianapolis or the Indiana Pacers, and I think that's maybe the smallest or the second smallest market in the league. Oklahoma City's not a very large market, and they were there. San Antonio's won 4 or 5 titles over the course of time. You look at football, Kansas City, right here, the Pittsburgh Steelers. If there wasn't a salary cap in football, the Pittsburgh Steelers would probably be the Pittsburgh Pirates, a team that just struggles to survive. So, in general, I'm a very libertarian person, and, I believe in the free market. But I think in sports, the leagues are one entity unto themselves. And for competitive reasons and for, reasons of actually being marketable and selling the sport, you want to have the ability, if you're in a small market, to know that your team is going to have a chance to maybe compete if they do it right. Now, the thing we have here in Pittsburgh is we have the double whammy. I mean, in Pittsburgh, we've got a small market and we've got an incompetent owner. So it makes up for itself. And, the fact is, and the owner has made up for it by hiring an even more incompetent general manager. But if you're a team like, Tampa or Milwaukee or some of these teams that have sort of figured it out a little bit, it's so important. You've got to hit lightning in a bottle with your draft choices and how you develop just to have a chance.
Yeah, and of course, in Pittsburgh's case, they even have, the pitcher, Paul Skeens. And how long is that guy going to stay with Pittsburgh? Because more money, once he's a free agent, more money's going to be available to this guy. New York, the LA Dodgers, the Houston Astros, even the Chicago Cubs, they can put up some money. So what's going to happen with that? And, Pittsburgh hasn't won since 79. We are family. So, yeah. So, but I just think we're too far gone right now for that salary cap.
Then, you get to a point where you build your team and then, the Dodgers go out and sign, somebody, or the Yankees go out and sign somebody, and now all of a sudden you're back sort of to square one. So to me, I think when it comes to the fan experience, I mean, someone like me, and listen, the other league, it would be the Kansas City Penguins or somebody. Kansas City would be the ones that would be enjoying Sidney Crosby if there wasn't a salary cap in the NHL. I mean, that's not an opinion, that's a fact. So as somebody that's from a smaller market, I see it from this side, and I see that basically other sports have figured it out, and their small market teams aren't really small market because of revenue sharing and their salary cap give them a chance.
Yeah, and so you look at football. Football has a hard cap, like very, very hard cap. And the penalty for even playing around with it is the New Orleans Saints. I mean, New Orleans Saints will be lucky to win 2 or 3 games this year. And so the penalty for even playing games with deferments and stuff is aggressive. To your very astute point, there's a reason why a mid-market team like the Kansas City Chiefs are competitive, because they have the same salary cap as the New York Giants or as the Los Angeles Rams. And so they draft Mahomes, they get a good coach, they develop a team, and now they have a dynasty. The same can be said for the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen. There's complete parity. And so, in fact, I think that baseball would get bigger with a salary cap. I think it would be more exciting that actually the value of these teams, these owners should want a salary cap. Who's fighting against it?
Well, again, there's a couple of groups that are fighting against it. One is obviously the super agents. Obviously, they don't want it because they want to be able to get, Ohtani a $700 million deal, or Juan Soto, what did he get? Another 650 or 700 or whatever he got. They want obviously to get those big deals for the superstars. But here's the other thing, okay? The small market teams don't want it because then they would be forced to spend more money because there would be a salary floor. But the other part of it is one of the trade-offs that would happen for a salary cap, I guarantee, is that, the Major League Baseball Players Association, assuming they're competent, which that's probably a big assumption, but they would fight for, okay, well, listen, we'll give you a salary cap, but all of that cheap labor you get for 4, 5, 6 years at the beginning of these guys' careers, we're not doing that anymore. So a guy like Paul Skeens, who, is probably the best pitcher in baseball, probably if he wasn't on the worst team or one of the worst teams would win the Cy Young. He might win it anyway. But he's pitching for $850,000 this year. And that's a part of the problem when it comes to the front end of it. And it's a negotiating piece. But the small market owners, here in Pittsburgh, boy, they love the free arbitration and arbitration. So they're willing to sit back and say, well, we don't have to spend any amount of money really because there's no salary floor. The large market teams obviously don't want a salary cap because they want to be able to spend whatever they want to spend, because their argument is, hey, this is a star-driven town here, and this is a star-driven team. We have to have stars. So it's kind of one of those things where there's 3 sides that all claim they would like to make a salary cap.
Yeah, and of course, which the Dodgers, you have Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. So you have like 3 stars right there. The Yankees with Aaron Judge, Stanton, and the pitcher Cole. So, and then, the Cubs, not so much, but they have a few players, and yeah, it's just a star-driven team. And then, of course, going back to Pittsburgh, I still see Paul Skeens going to be gone. He's going to be going to a big market. He's going to be in one of these uniforms. And same thing with the Detroit Tigers with Screwball. He's going to be in another uniform. So, yeah. And the salary cap, I just don't see it coming because we're just too far gone, as I said earlier.
Work, but really, deep down, they don't. They don't want it to work. And I think it's very short-sighted for a lot of the reasons we talked about. And Charlie, let me just say this. I went through it. The highest paid players in sports are not baseball players.
That's right.
And the other part of it is, that's per year, and it's even total contracts. The way the NBA does their salary cap is you have an exception. You can go above the salary cap for your own free agents. And also there's some veteran exceptions. The bottom line is veteran guys don't get the host job. The mid-level veteran guys are the ones in baseball who if you notice, Charlie, every year, like at the end of March, there's about 20 or 30 of these guys that are still out there. And you're like, why hasn't anyone signed them? Well, because they know, you know what, we're going to wait till they're desperate for a job and we'll give them, we'll give them a contract they have to take.
So first of all, it's a phenomenal analysis. I agree with all of it. And what we have right now is a spending spree. Of course, the same 5 or 6 teams, whether it be the Yankees or the Mets. And you have these super agents, Scott Boras being one of them, who is able to represent some of these big players and obviously is heavily incentivized with the current model. And some people say, well, it's the only sport with a true market where talent can be valued without outside restrictions. But again, to your point, the NFL is able to make this work. But let's also add, why does a floor also matter as much as a cap?
Well, I think, a couple things. Number one, because, you won't have teams like, the Pirates the last few years with a $40 or $50 million payroll. That would actually help the MLBA Players Association mid-level veterans if teams like the Pirates actually had to spend, say, $100 million. Then all of a sudden, those mid-level veterans would be able to get paid and get a little bit of money. And I think the other part of it is it ensures that teams are trying to be competitive. I mean, that doesn't mean in the NFL or in the NBA, you don't have teams that are really bad, but a lot of times it's cyclical, or it's just a matter of, incompetent ownership, like the Jets or, one of these teams that always seems to lose. It's not because they can't compete. And I don't even think it's because they're not trying to compete. I just think they have no idea what they're doing. And I think that when you look at a salary floor, now everybody has at least everybody's sort of in the same ball game. I mean, it's insane to me that in baseball, what is it? I think it's the Mets maybe this year might even have the highest payroll. Or the Dodgers, one of them's got like a $300 million payroll, and you got teams with $30 or $40 million payrolls. You're not even playing in the same sport at that point.
It's such a good point.
It's just silly.
Okay, so then what would the path forward need to be? I mean, to get something like this done. I mean, getting Congress involved is next to nothing, but what would a path forward potentially be to get a salary cap into place?
Well, I mean, Charlie, you understand unions are, theoretically run by players. And what it would take is it would take basically all of those mid-level veterans and even a lot of the pre-arbitration and arbitration players in the next collective bargaining agreement to say, listen, this is what we want. You need to help us out. You're not helping us. You're only helping, the Juan Sotos of the world. And here's the other thing, Charlie, the idea that, with no salary cap, there's a free market. You know what I mean? There really isn't, because there's only about 5 or 6 teams that can actually afford to sign these guys, and they can't sign them all. So the bottom line is there's a lot of guys that are probably going to have to take lesser than market because, you know what, there's not that many teams that can shell out $500 or $600 million. But it's going to take all of the mid-level veterans, and it's going to, the guys that are arbitration and even pre-arbitration guys at the next collective bargaining agreement, basically to sit down and say, listen, we're not doing anything unless you are going to put something in this to help us. And I'll go, here. I worked way back in a different life. I worked at the NBA during one of the lockouts.
Paul, please tell people how they can follow you, listen, read what you write. Please, opportunity to plug your work. Paul Zeese.
Yeah, but you can find me on Twitter or X or whatever we call it these days, just at Paul Zeiss. And, of course, in the Post-Gazette, I write every single day, and I do a little podcast every night. So follow me and have a good time.
Paul, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And go Cubs.
Yep. So, and I don't know how they're going to fix this MLB problem. It might take the players' union, but are all the players in agreement? So that's the issue right now. And of course, like agents like Scott Boras, man, he pretty much runs it. So, and the Dodgers have somewhat suffered through his signings, and some pretty good. So we'll have to see. But it's going to be a long road if MLB is going to do anything about this. Yep, and shout out to Charlie Kirk, and rest in peace. And any of you enjoyed any of this content, please give me the HKO special. Help the king out. hit the like, subscribe, and comment. And wherever you are, stay safe, and I'll see you in my next video.